The Book of Enoch discusses fallen watchers, human women, and bloodthirsty giants. It is an ancient book with 5 separate parts by different authors, plus segments from the Book of Noah thrown in. Nobody knows who wrote this book. The authorship is unclear, and it is attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, but it was not written by him. Enoch is considered a legendary figure, and the attribution to him is part of the pseudepigrapha, meaning the true authors used his name to give an aura of ancient wisdom and authority. The Book of Enoch was most likely written by multiple authors over several centuries, with estimates ranging from 3rd century BC to 1st century AD during the Second Temple period in Jewish history. The Book of Enoch is divided into 5 parts. The Book of the Watchers, where fallen angels marry human women and produce offspring called the Nephilim. The Book of Parables, where divine judgment is discussed and the Son of Man is introduced, a figure who will judge the wicked. The Book of Dream Visions, the Book of the Heavenly Luminaries, and the Epistle of Enoch. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas is a loose collection of childhood stories about Jesus. It fills in gaps in the Gospels of the New Testament, which mostly skip over the growing up years of Jesus. In the New Testament, only the Gospel of Luke includes a childhood story, featuring the 12-year-old Jesus and his parents. Though the Infancy Gospel of Thomas has been dismissed by some scholars as crude and sensational, recent work on the text may signal a turning of the tide. More scholars than ever take it seriously, not as a source for what actually happened in Jesus' youth, but as a witness to what some early Christians wondered about. It is, in other words, a family drama. How do Mary and Joseph take up the task of raising such an unusual child? Do they understand him? Does he understand them? Scholars generally assign the Infancy Gospel of Thomas a late 2nd or early 3rd century date. The original language is Greek. The Psalms of Solomon is a collection of 18 psalms written around 60 BC during the Roman invasion of Israel. King Solomon died hundreds of years before these psalms were published, so it's unclear to scholars why this collection of psalms is named after him. Solomon wrote Psalm 72 in the Bible, and the Psalms of Solomon share a similar theme with that chapter, so perhaps they were named after Solomon because it was his writing that inspired the writer of the Psalms of Solomon. While not considered inspired scripture, the Psalms of Solomon are historically significant as they were likely used in worship, much like modern hymns. They also mark the first recorded use of the term Son of David for the Messiah. The Book of Adam and Eve, also called The Conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, recounts the story of Adam and Eve after their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. It is part of the pseudepigrapha and not considered inspired scripture. The book is believed to have been written by an unknown Egyptian author in Arabic, later translated into Ethiopic. It is thought to have been written a few hundred years before Christ, with the first English translation in the 19th century. There are 2 books that constitute the Book of Adam and Eve. Book 1 follows Adam and Eve upon their exit from Eden and their subsequent temptations from Satan. According to the Book of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel both had twin sisters. Cain fell in love with his own twin, Lulua, but his parents wanted him to marry Abel's twin, Achlia, and that's why Cain murdered his brother. Book 2 of the Book of Adam and Eve relates the pre-flood history of Seth and Cain's warring families. The book contains fictional and fantastical tales, like how the earth rejected Abel's body and how Adam and Eve kept his body in their cave for 7 years. It also includes contradictions of biblical accounts, such as both Cain and Abel bringing sacrifices of blood and grain. The Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs is a pseudepigraphal work that claims to be the final words of Jacob's 12 sons, though scholars believe it was written during the intertestamental period and later edited by Christians. Each patriarch offers reflections on their own sins and virtues, urging future generations to live morally. Reuben warns against lust, Simeon repents for his jealousy, and Levi speaks of the dangers of pride. Judah, Dan, and Gad emphasize the need to avoid drunkenness, anger, and hatred, while Issachar and Zebulun encourage simplicity and charity. Joseph and Benjamin focus on purity, especially in resisting temptation, with Joseph being held up as an example of chastity. Though not part of the Bible, the Testaments offer insight into Judeo-Christian ethics of the time. The Odes of Solomon is a collection of Christian hymns written in the late 1st century AD, unrelated to the Psalms of Solomon, composed around 60 BC. Though not considered part of Scripture, these odes express key elements of faith, helping worshippers memorize doctrines through their poetic form. While some question certain details and suggest possible Gnostic influences, the text does not explicitly promote heresy. The hymns notably depict the Trinity, showing early Christian belief in the Father, Son, and Spirit. This connection to early Christian figures like Ignatius of Antioch reinforces the historical foundation of Trinitarian theology. The letter of Aristeas is an ancient text that tells a story about how the Hebrew Bible, specifically the first 5 books known as the Torah, was translated into Greek. The letter says this happened during the time of King Ptolemy II, who wanted a Greek version for his famous library in Alexandria. He sent a request to the Jewish high priest in Jerusalem asking for scholars to help with the translation. 72 scholars were chosen, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. They worked for 72 days and completed the translation, which became known as the Septuagint. The letter aims to show good relations between the Greek and Jewish communities. While it's a popular story, most scholars think it's more of a legend than actual history. The story of Ahikar is an ancient Near Eastern text believed to have been written in the 5th or 6th century BC. It tells the story of Ahikar, a wise and trusted counselor to the Assyrian kings Sennacherib and Esarhaddon. Despite his loyalty, Ahikar is betrayed by his adopted nephew, Nadin, who falsely accuses him of treason. As a result, Ahikar is sentenced to death, but the executioner spares him due to their friendship. Ahikar hides in secret until Nadin's treachery is revealed. The text is filled with proverbs and moral lessons, with Ahikar's wisdom being a central theme. Like other works from this period, the story of Ahikar was not considered inspired scripture, but was widely respected for its teachings on virtue, loyalty, and justice. Its influence spread across different cultures, even being referenced in the Book of Tobit, and inspiring similar works in later Christian and Islamic literature. The story's emphasis on wisdom and moral integrity reflects the values of the time and continues to be appreciated for its ethical lessons. The books of 1st and 2nd Esdras are not included in most biblical canons, except in some Greek Orthodox, Episcopal, or Lutheran traditions. 1st Esdras is part of the apocryphal deuterocanonical scripture, while 2nd Esdras is considered pseudepigraphal and apocalyptic. 1st Esdras recounts historical events like King Josiah's reforms and the Jews' return from Babylon, but contains historical errors. 2nd Esdras, written later, addresses Jewish suffering and contains 7 visions of Ezra, including messianic prophecies. Both texts raise questions about authorship and historical accuracy, but offer valuable insight into Jewish thought during and after the exile. The books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees chronicle the Jewish rebellion against the Seleucid Empire from 175 to the 134 BC. They are recognized in the Greek Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Coptic, and Russian Orthodox canons, but not by Protestants or Jews. 1st Maccabees focuses on the Jewish struggle for religious independence after Antiochus IV Epiphanes desecrated the temple and banned Jewish practices. The Maccabean family, led by Mattathias and later his son Judas, organized a successful revolt, restoring Jewish religious traditions. The 2nd book of Maccabees, written in Greek, offers a theological interpretation, introducing doctrines like prayers for the dead and resurrection. These books play a significant role in Jewish history, inspiring Hanukkah and influencing Catholic teachings, while Protestants reject their doctrinal significance. The Book of Jubilees, written between 135 and 105 BC, recounts biblical history from creation to Moses, revealed by an angel. It emphasizes a 364-day solar calendar and strict observance of religious laws like the Sabbath and circumcision, diverging from mainstream Jewish traditions. Jubilees glorifies patriarchs, often portraying them as flawless, contrasting with the more candid accounts in the Bible. It was likely written by an Essene member, as evidenced by similarities to Qumran teachings. Despite its detailed religious practices, including extreme punishments, the book is not accepted as canonical by most religious groups today due to its deviations from biblical texts. The Gospel of Mary, discovered in 1896, dates back to the 3rd and 5th centuries AD, written in Greek and Coptic. Although often linked to Mary Magdalene, the text never explicitly identifies which Mary it refers to. Significant portions of the manuscript are missing, making its message difficult to fully understand. Scholars consider it agnostic forgery, written in the late 2nd century, and view it as an attempt to promote heretical teachings under the guise of biblical authority. Its primary value lies in understanding early Christian heresies.